Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here on this Wednesday. Wednesday, the 23rd of August. Another month. Summer's getting ready to come to a close pretty soon. We're in the last innings of summer. And, it's kind of sad. We're going to be moving into winter. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you guys about something that's important. I'm going to talk about radios and why they're important. But first, I just wanted to say something real quick. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. Several out there in my audience donated some money, and I had enough to buy a whole used computer that was on Amazon. It's been refurbished, a refurbished computer, but it was very, very cheap. It's used. It's a few years old. It's probably from about 2015 or something like that. But it's good. It's got a good solid working processor in it and everything else. And it's got all the hardware, hard drive, motherboard, everything, case, power supply, everything. It says it gives a year's guarantee. So thank you very much. I was able to buy that. And this computer I'm working with here, I might have to hurry up the show. If this thing gets hot, the motherboard's probably going to go pop again. I just don't know when it's going to go, but I've got it working again for now. And I don't trust it anymore. Even though it's working right now, I don't trust it. It could pop at any second, and then I'd be back where I was. And I know it's not I've diagnosed it, and I'm pretty good at computers, I've diagnosed it, and I know it's not I know it's not, it's in the motherboard, something in the motherboard. Probably a transistor or something. It's got an intermittent problem. But thank you very much, you guys. Now, what I wanted to talk about radios. Let's get on to radios. And why are radios important? Because just imagine for yourself, you wake up some morning and the power's out. And, it's just everything's dead. Your internet, your cell phone's dead, everything's dead. You're still alive. The sun's still up there. The sky's blue. It's a beautiful day and everything's dead. All your modern convenience is dead. You might not even be able to start your generator. Say, well, why? The reason why is something called an electromagnetic pulse. Maybe came through while you were sleeping. You don't feel it. It doesn't affect your body. But it sure does affect everything that's electronic, including the big capacitors that they use at the big substations where they put your power out, and your cell phones, everything. Dead. Dead as a net. And it ain't coming back. Well, time passes. And everybody in your entire town wants to know what the hell happened. Including you. Well, the government, in circumstances like that, might resort to an older technology in order to actually get information out there. They might resort to radio. They might have to go back to radio. Broadcasting. So what good would that be if all of your electronics are fried? And you got no radio. You go get your radio and you pull it down off the shelf and it don't work because the electronics are fried because the electromagnetic pulse burn it out too. But radios are only small. Portable, AM, FM, weather band, shortwave radio. They're only small now. They're just a little small thing fit in the palm of your hand. So the best thing to do is get one of those and wrap it in aluminum foil. Many, many layers. I'll say, well, Glenn, why do you want us to wrap it in aluminum foil? Well, aluminum foil is not expensive. You can buy a whole thing, I think, for like $3 or something now. A whole big roll of it. It's cheap. Take your radio, take the batteries, pull the batteries out of it, put them in a separate little plastic bag, and put them, the radio, in a bag full of, and maybe put another bag, another little freezer baggie, and put your radio inside it. Wrap them all up and then go round and around and around them, first one way with the aluminum foil, and go round and around them the other way, and maybe put some rubber bands around it or something to hold it all. Or maybe a bungee cord or something around it to hold it all. And then you can put it up on the shelf. And when the EMP hits, that aluminum foil will stop the EMP. It acts as something called a Faraday cage. That's what it acts like. Or a Faraday box. The aluminum foil is a conductor, and it'll take the EMP, and it won't allow it to get to your radio, and at least they'll have something to work so you can get news. Because very likely that the government goes back to broadcasting, the emergency network will be broadcasting information. You say, well, why is that important? It's important. Well, say they broadcast. They're like this. They have this thing where they say ignorance of the law is no excuse. They expect us just to know what the law is all the time when they're constantly making new laws left and right, and we're supposed to know. Even if the grid's down, and even if we got no telecommunications, we're just supposed to know. So say they come along and they make a law. They say, oh, we're in the War Emergency Act or whatever. We're in martial law, blah, 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 blah. And they get on that thing and blah, 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 blah on the radio. Blah, 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 blah. Reminds me of Mr. Bean sitting in church, and he was listening to them go the sermon, and they're going blah, 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 blah. I don't know if you saw that episode. Mr. Bean was so funny. He was sitting in church, and the preacher was going on and on and on. They did like blah, 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 blah. And Mr. Bean was falling asleep, the whole time. Fell right, and he started to lean over in the pew at the church, and he started to fall on the floor. He was putting him to sleep, this constant. Well, that's what they're like. They get on there, and they'll be broadcasting to everybody. And they might tell you, hey, this is an emergency. There's been a World War III or whatever, or the financial system collapsed, or whatever the big emergency is, or a meteor from space, or aliens, or God knows what. We got all these problems coming at us. And they might say, hey, you know what? There's been a disaster bigger than we can handle. It's bigger than the government can handle. It's bigger than anything we've ever experienced. It's everywhere. It's not just in one area. And so they're going to do the same thing they did like during COVID. They'll just put out these arbitrary policies. You got to do this and you got to do that. And they might say, hey, we're putting in a curfew. You hear it on the radio. You're listening to your little radio, and you hear, we're putting in a curfew. 7 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning. And we're going to enforce this curfew with every power of the law. Anybody caught outside during those hours on the street or wherever will be considered a whatever, a looter or vandal, terror, whatever they'll say, right? And yeah, you might hear that on the radio, so you know what time the curfew's. You get the information. Because if you didn't have that information, you might go across the road to visit your neighbor, and a Humvee might come screaming down the street, or an AP, what do they call them, an armored personnel carrier full of troops might come screaming down the street, shining a big bright light on your face. Maybe. Just saying. This is the kind of times we're living in. And whose fault is all this? We're going through all this crap. And it's going to probably get to this level of crap before it's over. Whose fault is it all? Well, it's the people that are in power. It's their fault. They're doing it. They're not asking us. They're high, wide, and handsome and free. And if you don't believe it, just look back at what happened during COVID. They just bang their gavel on the desk and say it's going to be this way, whether you like it or not. You got no say in the matter. Anyway, I've rambled on a little bit. But I mean, this whole thing just disgusts me because we could be living in a... Oh, the world could be so different. The world could be so different if it was being managed properly. This world has the ability to support probably 10 times the amount of people that's on it right now. And everybody have food. This is a big planet. And I know they say, oh, it's overpopulated with 8 billion. I don't believe it. I think there's tremendous amounts of unused land. It's just that everything is so wasteful. Like the way they do cars and automobiles. I mean, I could get off on a tear about this, but I mean, they just... Honest to God, the waste. They designed the thing so that it's going to be in the dump after 3 or 4 years. With all their electronic components and all the crap they put on these cars. Honest to God, I mean, they could make a car, if they wanted to, that would last 100 years. I mean, why not? Put a little bit of thoughtmanship into it. Put a little bit of, instead of planned obsolescence, do the opposite. Make it so parts are exchangeable or whatever. This would get rid of enormous amounts of waste. Toxic wastes in our landfills and everything else. Everything's being mismanaged. The Earth's resources are being just basically raped. And it's just mismanaging the resources of the Earth. Something terrible. And it's all about greed. And it's all about these politicians and fat cats. I got to get on to my show here. I'm never going to get it done. Home purchase applications plummet to a 28-year low as nobody can afford to buy a home anymore. See, this is all part of it. Part and parcel. Everybody should be afford to... If we had a modern, productive society where everything was being not mismanaged but run properly, food would be laughed at, the price of food, because it would be so cheap and available that nobody would go hungry. And homes, a 12-year-old child that's an entrepreneur could afford to buy a home. But now nobody can afford to buy a home unless you're rich. And they can afford 50 of them. So what's fair about that? It says all Americans hoping to be able to buy a home and sometime soon, or at least afford to do so once in their lifetimes, will have bad news. U.S. mortgage rates are rising to the highest levels. 28 years it hasn't been like, and this is soon they're going to be saying in 100 years, and then they'll be saying in 1,000 years it's going to get that bad. Now, in other news here, can you believe this? J.P. Morgan's former gold trader Greg Smith is sentenced to 2 years for fraud and market manipulation in the silver market. They've been scamming, and they're getting 2 years in prison for market manipulation of precious metals. Greg Smith, who worked on the bank's precious metals desk, was convicted last year of 11 charges manipulating gold and silver prices from 2008 till 2016. You know, so he's gone. He's in jail right now. What's happening with the price of silver today? Oh, look at that. It's up 86 cents. That's just coincidence. I read that article and the price of silver is up today. Okay. So, what's going on in China? China's economy, the world's second largest, is in deep distress right now. It's not just a period of economic weakness. It could be the dimming of a long era of economic prosperity. And it says China's economy, the world's second largest, is now in deep distress, and its successful model of growth for 40 years stands broken. A predominant American financial publication has said, noting the signs of trouble extend beyond China's dismal economic data to distant provinces. China's getting in big trouble, and this is going to have knock-on effects. You betcha. But it's coming at the time when the whole thing was getting ready to turn over here anyway. Now, taking a look, why did I have it on here? Why did I have this page? Oh, maybe it's the Ukrainian drone attacks? That must be it. I don't know. I had it on this page for a reason. Russia and Ukraine trained drone attacks. Well, they've been attacking deep inside. The Ukrainians now have been attacking deep inside Russia. Now, it says, Ukraine news media says Kiev saboteurs were behind drone attacks on air bases deep inside Russia. Look at that plume of smoke. I say, well, why are the Russians putting up with that? Why don't they just nuke or whatever? Well, there's a good reason for that. I don't think China and Ukraine, and not Ukraine, but Russia, I don't think China and Russia and the BRICS want to get in it. I think that they are thinking more of a long-term strategy or plan. And when I say in it, I mean they don't really want to get the actual nitty-gritty of war. You know, they want to take America down, but they want to do it more in a Sun Tzu fashion sort of thing, you know. Silver price today is going up 82 cents. I showed you that before. 24.22. Yeah, 83 cents. Boy, she's really taken off today. Let's take a look at gold. Gold's $19.15. It's up $18.60. So it's a big day for gold and silver today. We're making up gains for the losses we took there a few weeks ago. And I just say it's about time. Now, cryptocurrency's not doing so good. Bitcoin is at 26,104. Ethereum is at 16.55, and XRP is at 52 cents. Taking a look at the Dow Jones today, we're up 140 points at 34,429. Oil today is at 78.90. It's down 74 cents. This is surprising me a little bit, the fact that oil's coming down in price down into the 70s. I was expecting it to go the opposite direction. Taking a look at bonds and rates today, we see falling yields, and they're falling quite considerably. The U.S. 10 years fell 10 basis points at 4.22, and the U.S. 30 years fell 8.8 basis points at 4.32. And taking a look now at the U.S. dollar index, and the dollar is basically, it's going along sideways. It popped up there earlier, but now it's right back down to the level it started at. So we're at 103.48 on the Dixie. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode, and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye, guys.